I only knew what haunted thought quickened his step, and why he looked upon the garnished day with such a wistful eye. The man that killed the thing he loved, and so he had to die. Yet each man kills the thing he loves, and by each let this be heard. Some do it with a bitter look, some with a flattering word, the coward with a kiss, the brave man with a sword. Some kill their love when they are young, and some when they are old. They strangle with the hands of lust, and some with the hands of gold. The kindest use a knife, because the dead soon grows so cold. Some love too little, some too long, some sell and others buy. Some do the deed with many tears, and some without a sigh. For each man kills the thing he loves, and yet each man does not die. I was imprisoned for 2 years, a man sentenced to death for killing another. While I was imprisoned for 2 years, a man was sentenced to death for killing another. An eye for an eye in exchange for a life was a life for another. When I went against the law and let myself love, I exchanged my career for secrecy and rejection from society. Rejection because in Victorian England, homosexuals or any being not like yourself are prosecuted and put away for not being their true selves. I was raised to be a proper man and a gentleman, and through the lives of riches. My brother and I used to sit through our mother's gatherings just to observe how life was and how we should act. When my mother was pregnant with me, she knew I'd be a girl. She'd brag to all her peers what she'd do with her first daughter, and so much more. Imagine her surprise. But even though she was devastated to see that I was really male, she still raised me as much as she could as a girl, dressing me in blue dresses and raising me as much as a girl she could until my first sister was born. Tragically, my beloved sister died in her early life at the age of 10. My father was an infamous eye and ear surgeon and became the oculist to Queen Victoria. He was knighted and is known as Sir William Wilde. I went to college in Oxford, where I got my degree and explored my love for writing. I wrote the most fabulous poems and plays and essays. I also wrote one novel as well, The Picture of Dorian Gray. My career rocketed, and through the chaos and beauty and extravagantness of what was my life, I got married. Who would have thought that? I got married and had 2 children, both sons. While I was attending Oxford for a speech, I met this man named Bosie. He was still attending college there, but we fell in love. His name was Lord Alfred Douglas, or as we called him, Bosie. He was handsome. We fell in love even though I had a wife and sons. My kids and my wife, they did not know about my homosexual tendencies, and I used to hide in hotels, blaming that I would hide there because I needed to concentrate on writing, because I was at the height of my career. I needed to keep all this money by writing to keep my wife and I afloat because we spent so much money. But what I was really doing was spending time with Bosie and not writing as much, and we stayed under the radar for more than 4 years. His father, the Marquis of Queensberry, noticed that we were spending so much time together, and he accused me of being a homosexual. Now, that was against the law at the time, so I sued him for libel. Libel is the defamation of character, an offense which in a complaint may be eligible to bring another to civil court. There are 2 types of defamation: defamation of spoken defamation, or slander, or written defamation, or libel. During the trial, they brought up the letters that I wrote to Bosie, and I lost the trial. I lost it. Now, they brought up how I include the idea of Hellenism in my writings, and they beat down my case with it. Now, after losing the trial, another trial was filed upon me, but not a civil trial, a criminal trial. Now, in the time of the libel trial, gay people like myself were prosecuted and sent away. I walked into the courtroom for the first few days of the trial and had to way too confident, and that did not help me. I denied everything, and everything I denied was proven to be true. Everything was true, and my career was ruined. I was transferred from jail to jail, and everything I loved was taken away from me. I lost the rights to see my children. All of my books I've collected my whole life, sold and gone. All of my valuables that I earned from my talents, and that my talents let me obtain, torn from my grasp. It was as if my life was a dream, and I was punished for it. I let myself go against the law, knowing the outcome, and my happiness was gone. My sentence for being to love another was 2 years of hard labor. In Reading Jail, one of the jails they placed me in, you were given the bare minimum to survive. I didn't even feel alive at the time. you wouldn't even call the living style of a jail actually living. It was more being dead with the ability to walk and work. But the other inmates and I had to break rocks and do other useless activities, while I thought the idea of work was to have an actual outcome. I wrote a letter to Bosie while imprisoned, and even though he never got it until years after my death, it was the closest thing I ever came to closure with our relationship. I begin by telling you I blame myself terribly. As I sit here in this dark cell in convict clothes, a disgraced and ruined man, I blame myself. In the perpetued and fitful nights of anguish, the long monotonous days of pain, it is myself I blame. I blame myself for following an unintellectual friendship, a friendship whose primary aim was not the creation and contemplation of beautiful things to entirely dominate my life. That was an excerpt from the letter that I wrote. That was over 200 pages long. I wrote out everything that I've been thinking of those 2 years of hard labor. I wrote it while I was prosecuted, and even though I was prosecuted, Bosie's life was never ruined. He was never sentenced. As his father said, if he did not speak to me ever again, he would not be prosecuted and his actions would be hidden. They released me into the public after my enjailment and the secretive dead of night, and that's how my life went on for the rest of it. I fled to Paris, France, in disgrace and rejection from society I was once a friend to. I couldn't even produce writings in my own name, knowing that people might have the same fate. I wrote in a pen name, but I never wrote the same. The spark in me that made me want to write was crushed by society. Society had shaped my whole life, and the only say I had in my life was through my writing. My writing was my way to be free from the community's wrath and its influence. Throughout my whole life, my mother's need for a daughter, to having to hide my true self from the prosecution and sentence to jail. This made me realize that being up to society's standards is not being to your true self. You need to be up to your own standards, and that's all that really matters. Just 3 years after being released, the meningitis I contracted in the filthy prisons took over. For the 3 years I was out, the sickness slowly took over my life, and at the end of those 3 years, the illness decided I had lived long enough. Long enough to make an imprint in our society. That's our purpose, right? I am Oscar Wilde, a playwright, a poet, and a man who let himself fall victim to society. Thank you.